understanding of the importance of the law. In the weeks to come, we're going to deal with grace and faith and how that helps us through Yahweh Shai, our Lord. Now, the study today is the law and the letters. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and we're going to read verse 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 1. We're going to take our time with this study in order for us to get good understanding. 11 and 1.
In the book 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 1. Ye followers of me, even as I am of the Mashiach.
So be you followers of me, even as I am of Christ, the Mashiach. So we follow on to know more. We follow on to adapt to the principles of the covenant of our faith, that we may stay in the righteous path that he has set for us in his word. Let's go to St. John chapter 15, and we're going to read verse 10. Because we've got to keep the commandments. Let's go.
The book of St. John chapter 15 verse 10. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love.
So it says that we must keep his commandments. The word keep means to keep a hold of. It means to secure. And that's why in certain castles, they had a place that was called the keep. In certain marine docks, they have a place they call the keep, because these areas were secure so that no harm would come to merchandise or even shipping. So when we use the word here, if you keep my commandment, it means you've got to keep it secure, protect it with your life.
That's right.
And said, you shall abide in my love. So if you secure the law of the Lord, he then is saying that he's going to abide and keep you in his love. But then when we read on it, says what?
Even as I have kept my Father's commandments.
So if he keeps his Father's commandments, and you now keep the commandments that he's given you, you are going to be doubly blessed. Read.
And abide in his love.
And to stay in his love. The word abide is to tabernacle, to stay in his love, to dwell in his love. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's still stay in John, but let's go to chapter 10 and verse 22. 10 and 22, please.
The book of St. John, chapter 10, verse 22. And it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication.
Now, the reason why that's an important word, feast of dedication, let's see now. Let's see. Let's go to 1 Maccabees 4 and 59. Just we get some understanding of the feast, the dedication. 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and 59. Let's read.
In the Apocrypha, 1 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 59. Moreover, Judas and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season, from year to year, by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Classia, with mirth and gladness.
With mirth and gladness. So we see then that this particular feast was a time to be joyous, a time to celebrate. So here we read, and it was at Jerusalem, the feast of dedication, and it was winter. All right, let's read on just a little bit more, and then we're going to go to another scripture.
Verse 23. And Yahushua, walked in the temple in Solomon's porch.
So he walked in the temple and Solomon's porch. You can get more information on that from Luke chapter 2 and 40. But let's go on. Let's go to Luke chapter 6 and verse 5. Luke chapter 6 and verse 5.
This is the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 5. And he said unto them, that the Son of Man is Lord, also of the Sabbath.
Read it again for me, please.
And he said unto them, that the Son of Man is Lord, also of the Sabbath.
So the word Lord, again, it also comes from an old English word, which basically means owner. That's why you'll find in the UK they have places called the House of Lords. These were the people that were owners. They owned land, they owned property, they owned much. Here the scripture now says that the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. He owns it. Therefore, if he owns it, he has the right to dictate what is done on it.
That's right.
So what he says, that is what we must do. So let's go from there, if you please, to Matthew chapter 14 and 36. Let's bring a story into it. Matthew chapter 14 and verse 36. Read that word.
The book of St. Matthew, chapter 14, verse 36. And besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched were made perfectly whole.
Read it one more time.
Matthew chapter 14, verse 36. And besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and that as many as touched were made perfectly whole.
Many as touched were made perfectly whole. So it's dealing with touching the hem of his garment. That also goes into it. Let's look at a couple of things. I'll hold this quickly. Let's go to Mark chapter 5 and 24. Just for a quick minute. Mark chapter 5 and 24. Read that well.
Mark chapter 5, verse 24. And Yahushua went with him, and much people followed him and thronged him.
Read on.
And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years.
12 years. 12 here indicates judgment. There was judgment on her life. So remember what we learned is that when we come back, when we're regenerated, the judgment that we face is on this earth.
That's right.
So here it said for issue of blood for 12 years, and she couldn't get any healing. But let's read it on and let's get more clarity.
Verse 26. And had suffered many things of many physicians.
Read.
And had spent all that she had, and was nothing better, but rather grew worse.
Read.
When she had heard of Yahushua, came in the press behind, and touched his garment.
Touch what?
Touched his garment.
Read.
For she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole.
Now, to understand this more specifically, it wasn't necessarily, when it uses the hem of his garment, what it was primarily saying, she touched the fringes. The fringes. It was the fringes that she touched. And remember, the fringes dangle. So it wasn't a question that she grabbed the hem. I know many preachers have taught that. But the fringes move, so you're touching it. Just get a sweep of that on your hand connected her because of her faith. So let's read it again.
Mark chapter 5, verse 27. When she had heard of Yahushua, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, if I may touch but his clothes,
Read.
I shall be whole.
Read.
Verse 29. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up.
So straightway when she touched, remember, fringes are a law. And the moment she touched it, she released to herself, because she was a child of Israel, the law that allowed her to be a partaker of healing. Remember, the other nations are not partakers of healing.
That's right.
That's why when other nations came, he said, what, do you want to give the food that belongs to the children of Israel to dogs? So then when we read on now, it says further,
and straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague.
Because she operated through obedience. So it said that the afflictions, the plague, the affliction had dried up. Now, watch this now. Read on the next verse.
Verse 30. And Yahushua, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him.
Now, virtue went out of him because, again, he is the owner of the Sabbath. He is the owner of the laws that's given. And now this woman has touched him. He felt virtue leave him. And then he said, who has touched? In other words, who had the nerve, the gall to touch my clothes? Read on.
Virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press, and said, who touched my clothes?
Who touched me? Watch this now, go on.
And his disciples said unto him, thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, who touched me?
So the disciples got a little bit upset because, what are you talking about? We're in the press. Everyone's touching you.
That's right.
But the difference between everyone's touch versus this touch was this touch needed something vital and had the nerve to go and touch him and draw from him. So we must always remember that through faith we can draw something from the Almighty,
right,
even though, glory to his name, even though permission has not necessarily been given for us to get something.
That's right.
That's the difference between the law and the letter. Now, watch this now. Read on.
Verse 32. And he looked round about to see her that had done this thing.
So he's looking who has done it. Because remember, someone who is unclean has no right going up and touching a priest. But she went on and did it anyway. Read.
But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing that was done in her, came and fell down before him.
Because she broke the law. But her faith, and remember that Yahushua brings grace. Read.
And told him all the truth. And he said unto her, daughter, thy faith.
Now, when he uses the word daughter, that's important because it lets you know this is not any other nation. Now, I know others have taught this, that, well, you know, she could have been anyone. No, no, no. Daughter is a word that's only used towards those women that are of Israel. Read.
Daughter, thy faith.
Thy what?
Thy faith.
There is the word faith. Thy faith. Read.
Hath made thee whole.
Read.
Go in peace.
Now you can go in peace. Read.
And be whole of thy plague.
And be whole of thy afflictions. That's heavy. All right. But let's leave that. Otherwise we'll end up teaching on that all the way through. So when we begin to see, let's go back to read what we last read, please. Matthew chapter 14
Yes, sir.
and verse 36.
Yes, sir. St. Matthew chapter 14, verse 36. And besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched were made perfectly whole.
Let's go to Acts chapter 19 and 12, please. Acts 19 and 12. Let's read.
Acts chapter 19, verse 12. So that from his body were brought unto the sick handkerchiefs or aprons, and the diseases departed from them, and the evil spirits went out of them.
Read.
Then certain of the vagabond Jews, exorcists, took upon them to call over them which had evil spirits the name of the Lord Yahushua, saying, we adjure you by Yahushua whom Paul preacheth.
See, so some would come without the proper credentials, the proper authority, and they weren't just saying in the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. They were saying in the name of he who Paul preaches. You see, how do you get away with? Read it again, if you please.
Yes, sir. Verse 13. Then certain of the vagabond Jews, exorcists, took upon them to call over them which had evil spirits the name of the Lord Yahushua, saying, We adjure you by Yahushua, whom Paul preaches.
That's right. We don't preach it, but Paul preaches, so we're kind of against you with that. You see, not good. Not good for them. Anyway, that story leads into far more than that, so we won't touch that because that's not where we're going. Now, let's go from here, if you please. Let's go to Luke chapter 2 and 49. Luke 2 and 49, if you please.
The book of Luke, chapter 2, verse 49. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business?
All right. Now, to get context to this, let's go back and read, if you please, verse 47 and come down.
Luke chapter 2, verse 47. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing.
Now, the reason why that's important too is because it makes it very, very clear. It said, thy father. So, for those who have a problem saying that, well, you know, his stepfather and all of that, that's no stepfather. It's saying, thy father and I sought thee sorely. Okay, so for those who are saying, you know, well, it was his father, it's his stepfather, really. No stepfather here. It was his father. Then when we read on, it says,
verse 49, and he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business?
That I must be about my Father's business. All right, before we go any further, just run to 1 John chapter 4 and 3. Just quick minute. 1 John 4 and 3.
The book of 1 John, chapter 4, verse 3. And every spirit that confesses in the Salaki, and that every spirit that confesses not that Yahushua the Mashiach is come in the flesh.
Now it says confess, it means to continue to confess. Not one time, but continues to. Read.
Confesses not that Yahushua the Mashiach is come in the flesh is not of the Most High.
Read.
And this is that spirit of the Antichrist.
Read.
Whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already is it in the world.
It in the world. All right, let's go back if you please. Let's read verse 49 again.
Luke chapter 2, verse 49. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business?
Be about my Father's business. All right. And the word wist here, it means to know or knew. Knew you not that I must be about my Father's business. Now, here he's professing his heavenly Father's business. All right. From here, let's go to, where do we leave off? Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and 8. Let's do with the Passover. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and 8.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice,
Read that again, read that again. That's powerful.
Yes, sir. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven.
Not with old leaven, read.
Neither with the leaven of malice.
Neither with the leaven of malice, read.
And wickedness. But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
Sincerity and truth. But let's just pull a couple of precepts to go with that real quick. Let's go to Exodus chapter 12 and 15. And then we'll go to Deuteronomy 16 and 3.
12 and 15.
Read up.
The book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 15. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses.
Clean your houses. Clean that body. Read.
For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel.
Shall be what?
Cut off from Israel.
All right. From here, let's go to Deuteronomy 16 and 3. 16 and 3.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 3. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith.
All right, for those of you that are not familiar with why he keeps using the word 7, because 7 is a number of completion. Let's read.
Therewith, even the bread of affliction, for thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste.
In haste, which is again exemplifies the fact that when the time comes that Yahweh will come back for us, when he gathers his people out of this Babylonian existence, he will do it with haste. He will not waste any time with it. We won't be wondering when is our turn. For those who are his elect, it will be done quickly. That's why we use the expression, because maybe it's the best expression for us to work with right now, that we're going to be beamed up into the chariots. Can't get any quicker than that. And the beauty of that is that we will be seen. The world will see us. And here is the crunch on it, that only a particular group of people will be seen. Now that's going to be quite astonishing for some, but when you see a certain group of people that you have plagued for years, now you see them being beamed up, and people that look like others are not being beamed up.
That's right.
It's going to be a time. Let's finish reading this.
That thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt, all the days of thy life.
All the days of thy life. Now, remember, this that we've read just now about Egypt, about coming through the Red Sea, about Pharaoh's army and all that. Notice, this is something that we speak about because this existed in our past and we talk about it. But here is what you've got to understand. When we are beamed up into the chariot and taken up by the Most High, that is going to be the deliverance that we're going to be talking about forevermore. Not Egypt no longer, not the Red Sea no longer, not Pharaoh no longer. We're going to be talking about him who has brought us out of Babylon in this particular age. This is going to be the great conversation. Not the conversation of the Red Sea, not the conversation of Pharaoh. This is going to be the great talk about how he delivered us. Now, it's not going to be something. This is going to be a whole new conversation that we're going to have. That's not going to be like any other conversation we've had in the past.
That's right.
All right. Did we finish it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go back, if you please.
Exodus or Corinthians?
Let's go to Corinthians. Let's go back to Corinthians. Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 8.
This is the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 5 and verse 8. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice.
So you cannot keep the feast with those old things that still have a sinful attachment. No malice. Get rid of malice. Get rid of that old leaven. Get rid of the wickedness. Let's finish it.
And wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
So it must be sincere and it must be true. Let's go to Romans chapter 7 and 22, please. Romans 7 and verse 22.
The book of Romans, chapter 7, verse 22. For I delight in the law of the Most High.
So I delight in the law of the Most High. Read.
After the inward man.
In fact, to understand that, let's, all right. For I delight in the law of the Most High. Let's read very quickly Psalms 1 and 2. Psalms 1 and verse 2.
The book of Psalms, chapter 1, verse 2. But his delight is in the law.
Read it again for me, please.
But his delight is in the law.
And in, you hold it there. And in Romans chapter 7 and verse 22 it says, read, sir.
Romans chapter 7, verse 22. For I delight in the law of the Most High after the inward man.
After the inward man. Go back and finish what you just read in Psalms chapter 1 and 2.
Psalms chapter 1, verse 2. But his delight is in the law of the Most High, and in his law doth he meditate day and night.
All right. Let's just understand the inward man just real quick. Let's pull a precept for that. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter, no, 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and 16. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and 16.
The book of 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16. For which cause we faint not.
We do what?
For which cause we faint not.
We faint not. Go on.
But through Salaki, but though our outward man perish.
See, so though the flesh will perish, watch it now.
Yet the inward man is renewed day by day.
So our spirit is renewed day by day. Now, I think we're going to read just verse 17 as well, just as an encouragement.
Verse 17. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment.
Any affliction you're going through in this life now, it's a light affliction. It may seem like I can't do it. It may seem like it's overwhelming.
Glory.
But it said it is a light affliction, which is but for a moment. Why? Because this life that we live, even though we live 50, 60, 70, 90 years, it's a moment in the span of time. Finish it for me, please.
Worketh for us a fair, it's lucky.
Hold it. It does what?
Worketh
so
for
it's
us.
Continually working for us. Read.
A far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory.
Weight of glory. Wonderful. Marvelous. All right. All right. So from there, let's go back, if you please.
Romans.
Yes, please.
The book of Romans, chapter 7, verse 22. For I delight in the law of the Most High after the inward man.
Go on.
But I see another law.
But there are other laws that we're working with. Now, how can we make that understandable or clear as far as we are concerned? You live in a world right now where you are working with laws every day. One of the laws that we work with is called the law of gravity. They call it gravity. Now, Yahweh may come and tell us it's called something else when he returns. But that's the term that was used by Sir Isaac Newton.
That's right.
And so he called it that. That was what he coined. Now remember, everything that Esau has called, whatever they call it, when Yahushua comes, he'll tell us that it could be it will be something else. But it says now that, but I see another law in my members. So there are laws external to us, and there are laws internal to us.
Right.
So we know that there is a war going on in our members, in our body. And it goes on to tell us what, sir?
Warring against the law of my mind.
The law of my mind, because our mind right now is a prison. Because it's in a state of lockdown.
That's right.
Even though we want to believe and see certain things, we can only believe that through faith.
That's right.
Because the laws or this flesh tries to limit how we think. That's why we don't get the things that we want oftentimes, because we limit it because of our faith. Read.
And bring me into captivity.
So it brings you into captivity. That's the lockdown. Your mind is in a state of lockdown. But you are the only one that can release your mind through the power of Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. You can do it through him. But watch what it says. Read.
To the law of sin.
To the law of sin. Read.
Which is in my members.
It's in your members. You're fighting that. And that's why it takes a particular, that's why you're going to know who is of the elect and who isn't.
That's right.
Those who will resist the flesh, will resist what your flesh wants you to do, and rise above it. James gives us, in fact, hold that, run to James 4 and 1. James 4 and 1. He breaks it down nicely to us.
The book of James, chapter 4, verse 1. From whence come wars?
What?
From whence come wars?
See that? From whence come wars. Now, when it uses the word wars there, it means conflicts. So whence come all these conflicts? Read.
And fightings among you, come they not hence, even of your lust that war in your members?
Because they said, when it says the lust that wars in your members, dealing with the desires for pleasure. It's a desire for pleasure. That lust is a desire in your members for pleasure. Oh, but I want to do this. I feel a certain way. No, you've got to get over those feelings. Those feelings will get you in trouble.
That's right.
So let's go back, if you please. In fact, let's take it a step further from 1 Corinthians 15 and 51, real quick. 1 Corinthians 15 and 51, real quick. Just go ahead for me.
1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed.
That's the change we're looking for, because we cannot survive in this present flesh. So we're looking for a change. All right, let's go back. Let's go to Romans chapter 3 and 27. Romans 3 and 27.
The book of Romans, chapter 3, verse 27. Where is boasting then? Is it excluded? By what law? Of works? Nay, but by the law of faith.
By the law of faith.
That's right.
All right, from here let's go to Colossians chapter 2 and 14. Colossians chapter 2 and 14. After we get rid of some of that sin.
The book of Colossians, chapter 2, verse 14. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us.
Contrary to us, read.
And took it out of the way.
And took it where?
Out of the way.
Out of the way, read.
Nailing it to his cross.
So the cross, he nailed it there. So much of what we were carrying, it was nailed to the cross in order for it not to come back and affect our life. Now, if you go back and you do the same thing that was nailed to the cross for you, what does that mean? You've crucified him afresh. You've made his actions a waste of time. Read it one more time, if you please.
Colossians chapter 2, verse 14. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us.
So there's so many things that was written up against us that had us bound for complete and utter destruction. But he said he blotted them out. And how did he blot them out? He carried them and nailed it to the cross. So we wouldn't have to carry it. That's why when you feel guilty over something that he has already nailed to the cross, you are denying the truth. You're denying the fact that he has done the work for you. All right, let's go to Acts 27 and verse 9.
Quick question.
Yes, question, go ahead.
Where it says nailing it to the cross, is that an error? Because, he was put to a tree, right?
Say again?
Is that an error when it says cross?
No, because you see, we don't, there's been, historically, there is different thoughts about how was he crucified. Was he put on a literal cross, or did they bring because remember, he brought part of the wood to be hung on a cross. Some say that he carried the transom, which was the piece that went across. And when they brought that, they nailed it to a tree, a little tree, hung him on that, and nailed his feet to the trunk of the tree. Some say that because it was trees that was in line. Others say it wasn't that. It was a literal cross. They put it in the ground and they nailed him to it. Then there's the third group who say there wasn't a transom. They nailed him where his hands were up, above. Well, the reason why we know that's not so is because his hand was stretched from east to west. You see? But again, there are many versions. There are scriptures that we can rely on that tells us it is the cross, so we can rely on that. But we mustn't get too historically locked into that, because the focus is on his death. Here is the second point. All of his people, how have they died over the centuries?
Hung.
They've been hung. Hung from what?
Trees.
There it is. All of his people. Why do we know this? Because there is archives upon archive showing our people hung on a tree.
That's right.
And guess what? There's pictures showing the people who are standing beneath the body swinging, and they are smiling and laughing.
Right.
No, I got to leave it alone because it provokes me. Because I'll get up on it. You see, are they going to be laughing when the time comes? Can you imagine?
National TV.
Scripture says there will be weeping, wailing, and a gnashing of teeth.
That's right.
Now, how do you apologize for that? Aren't going to be too many apologies. Okay. Let me behave and stay on track. Okay. Where are we? Acts 27 and verse 9?
27 and 9.
Yes, let's go. Acts chapter 27 and verse 9.
The book of Acts, chapter 27, verse 9. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous.
Okay, I'm in the wrong scripture. So go to Acts 24 and 14 for me, please. 24 and 14. Yes, 24 and 14. It's lucky. Go ahead.
The book of Acts, chapter 24, verse 14. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Most High of my fathers, believing all things.
Believing what?
believing all things
Read.
which are written in the law and in the prophets.
And in the prophets. Believe in all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Let's back that up by going to Colossians chapter 2 and 16.
The book of Colossians, chapter 2, verse 16. Let no man, therefore, judge you in meat.
In what?
In meat.
In meat.
Or in drink, or in respect of a holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days.
So we can't allow anyone to make us feel ashamed of keeping his laws, his statutes, and his commandments. Because we drink in respect of the holidays, or the new moon, or of the Sabbath. In fact, read 17 and 18.
Verse 17, which are a shadow of things to come.
So, all of the things we're doing there, they are shadows of what we're going to be doing in the kingdom. Go on.
But the body is of the Mashiach.
It's of the Mashiach. Read on.
Let no man beguile you.
Let no man beguile you. Don't let him defraud you. Read.
Of your reward in a voluntary humility.
Read.
And worshiping of angels.
Read.
Intruding into those things which he had not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind.
All right. Let's go back to Acts. Read that one more time. Acts chapter 24 and 14.
Yes, sir. Acts chapter 24, verse 14. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Most High of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets.
All right, let's go to Sirach chapter 32 and verse 24. Yes, sir.
In the Apocrypha, Ecclesiasticus also as Sirach, chapter 32, verse 24. He that believeth in the Most High taketh heed to the
Do
commandment.
what?
Taketh heed to the commandment.
Read.
And he that trusteth in him shall fare never the worse.
So you must trust in him, and you will never fear the worst that is to come. He that believeth in Yahweh taketh heed to the commandments. You take heed to them. You follow them. You obey them. And he that trusteth in him shall fear never the worst. Go to chapter 33 and read verse 4 for me, please.
Yes, sir. Sirach, chapter 33, verse 4. Prepare what to say, and so thou shalt be heard, and bind up instruction, and then make answer.
All right. Read on.
Verse 5. The heart of the foolish is like a cartwheel, and his thoughts are like a rolling axle tree.
Yeah. So their minds are not willing to be still and hear what's being spoken to them.
That's right.
All right, let's leave that. Let's go from here back to Romans chapter 13. I'm nearly through. Romans chapter 13 and verse 9. Let's read.
The book of Romans, chapter 13 and verse 9. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal.
Now, what I want you to see from this is this. Notice, we've read a number of letters. We've read letters, Colossians, and now we're reading Romans again. When we read Romans here, This was written to Israelites in Rome, right? So, in Rome, he's saying to the Israelites who are in Rome, read verse 9 again.
Romans chapter 13, verse 9. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery.
Don't commit adultery, read.
Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal.
Read.
Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
Now, the neighbor that he's speaking about is not the neighbor who is a Roman.
That's right.
Now, I know people are saying, but the scripture plainly says, love thy neighbor. Your neighbor that is telling us about is those who are of Israel.
That's right. Can we get Leviticus 19?
Yes, please, sir. Those who are of Israel. That is your neighbor. Read.
This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him.
See that? All right.
19, 17?
Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17.
It's not right very well for me. I'm right.
You have to write at an angle.
At an angle?
Yes, sir.
So you've mastered it. Let's read it again.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him.
See, so it's telling you that your neighbor is your brother. It's not speaking about your neighbor being of the Romans. And if I'm in Ephesus, it's going to be the Ephesians. No, it's saying wherever you are, don't get so caught up with the philosophies of the people that you're among that you try to be more like them and you hate your brethren.
That's right.
That's what's happening right here in America right now. People are very Americanized and they hate their own. And then Terrence said, I hate those Negroes. But that's your brother.
That's right.
Oh, but I love my next door neighbor. I know next door neighbor is Edom. Don't get that. Because, believe it or not, they're not your neighbor.
That's right.
Elam is not your neighbor. Moab is not your neighbor. Your brother is your neighbor. So this that we're reading, go to Proverbs 22 and 7 for me, please. This, what we're reading here, is pointing itself out to the Israelites who are in Rome. Let's go.
22, 27?
No, 22 and 7.
22, 27. Yes, sir. The book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender.
Read it one more time.
The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender.
And the what? The borrower is the servant to them who lend. All right. From here, let's go to Baruch chapter 4 and 1.
In the Apocrypha, Baruch chapter 4, verse 1. This is the book of the commandments of the Most High, and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life.
Shall what?
Shall come to life.
If you keep the law, you will live. Read.
But such as leave it shall die.
Shall die. Read it one more time so we make sure that everyone is.
Baruch chapter 4 verse 1. This is the book of the commandments of the Most High, and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die.
Shall die. Now, why do we die? Jump down to verse 6 for me, please.
Yes, sir. Verse 6. Ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction.
What?
Not for your destruction.
Read.
But because ye moved the Most High to wrath. Yea, Salaki, ye were delivered unto the enemies.
Read.
For ye provoked him that made you by sacrificing unto devils.
Read.
And not to the Most High.
Read.
Ye have forgotten the everlasting Most High, that brought you up, and ye have grieved Jerusalem that nursed you.
Read.
For when she saw the wrath of the Most High coming upon you, she said, Hearken, O ye that dwell about Zion.
Read.
The Most High hath brought upon me great mourning, for I saw the captivity of my sons and daughters, which the everlasting brought upon them.
Read.
With joy did I nurse them, but sent them away with weeping and mourning.
Read.
Let no man rejoice over me, a widow and forsaken of many, for Salaki, who for the sins of my children am left desolate.
Read.
Because they departed from the law.
They did what?
They departed from the law
Read.
of the Most High God. They knew not his statutes.
They knew not what?
Not his statutes.
Read.
Nor walked in the ways of his commandments.
Nor did what?
Walked in the ways of his commandments.
Read.
Nor trod in the paths of discipline.
Read.
In his righteousness. Let them that dwell about Zion come and remember ye the captivity of my sons and daughters.
Read.
Which the everlasting hath brought upon them. For he hath brought a nation upon them from far, and shameless nation, and of a strange language, who neither reverenced old man nor pitied child.
Read.
Having Salaki, these have carried away the dear beloved children of the widow, and left her that was alone desolate without daughters. But what can I help you? For he hath brought these plagues upon you, will deliver you from the hands of your enemies.
That's it. Only he can deliver you from the hands of your enemy. And it all began with verse 1 that said, this is the book of the commandments of Yahweh, and the laws that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. You'll end up walking in the congregation of the dead.
Yes.
And here enters the teaching. That's heavy meat right there. Any questions from anyone? I mean, if you read that and you still go off, wow. You belong in the congregation of the dead.
Man.
That's some heavy meat.
Yeah, it's heavy. Yeah, it's heavy. But that's the Torah right there.
You want to highlight it, Danny?
Yes, sir.
Well, that is-
Yes, sir.
It says the law that endureth forever. So, you know, people...
So, say again?
It says the law that endureth forever.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
people
forever.
say, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. It's, why would you just fuss about what to do, what not to do?
He has told us exactly what we ought to do, and remember, he has said that he is the Lord of the Sabbath.
That's right.
So what he says, it goes.
That's right.
There's no argument, there's no debating, there's no complaining. Complaining, die. That's it. Because he is doing this to keep you.
That's right.
That's why the scripture says, now unto him who is able to keep us from falling and to present us faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. The only way he's going to do that is if you're still abiding in the law. The law of the Lord is perfect. Doing what? Making wise the simple and converting the simple.
Yeah.
And converting the soul is what I should say. Make sure I got that right.
Psalms 19.
Yes, in fact, let's read it.
That's it.
Any questions while we read that verse there?
I was just thinking about how they used to always tell us in the Wellington Baptist Church that the law was done away with.
Ma'am?
And this right here, this debunks all of that.
Absolutely. They always tell you that the law was done away with. And then they'll say, oh, so you're still under the law. Where do you get that from? Where is that in the scriptures? There's no such thing.
No, sir.
Go ahead and read what you have, officer.
It's the book of Psalms, chapter 19, verse 7. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Most High is sure, making wise the simple. You can't get any better than that.
That's it.
Is that Psalms 14:7?
19:7.
19:7.
Yes, ma'am. You can't get any better than that. It makes you perfect.
Yeah.
And it converts you. So you know you're walking in righteousness.
Correct. You see, if you don't have the law, how do you know when you're going off? You see, in the old traditional so-called church, the laws was given by the preacher. That's why the scripture said we got caught up in the traditions of men.
That's right.
And so they would tell you, they'd say to you, you can't go to the cinema, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. That had nothing to do with the law. Nothing to do with it. And here's the thing, if you were following the law, the spirit of the law would guide you that even if you were going to the cinema back in the day, I'm speaking back in the day, back in my day, you would have enough spirit in you with the understanding of the law to know, no, I don't think I'm going to go and see that. That's not good for my spirit. That's not good. That's not, you know. But you see, when you're not following the law, you couldn't see anything. Back in the day, in my day, there were things called triple X. There were triple X movies. And here's the thing, they were not considered to be porn because they were called triple X. Yes.
So when it says that the Spirit would lead you into all truth, is that the real reason for the Holy Ghost?
Well, the law, the Spirit is in the law. Let's go to first. What you got? Go ahead.
Romans 11:7.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
This is the book of Romans, chapter 7, verse 12. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, just and good. Verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold unto sin.
Read on.
Verse 15. For that which I do, I allow not.
See? So there's some things that, read it again. For
that which I do, I allow not.
Read on.
For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that I do.
That I do. That's because there are laws working in your body. That's Romans chapter 7 and verse 12 and 14. Now, let's go to Titus chapter 2 and 11 real quick.
Yes, sir.
To top that off there.
Grace.
And then, Titus 2 and 11.
This is the book of Titus, chapter 2, verse 11.
Go ahead.
For the grace of the Most High that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men.
So let's read that again.
For the grace of the Most High,
For the grace of the Most High,
that bringeth salvation,
read,
hath appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness,
doing what?
denying ungodliness,
Read.
and worldly lust,
Read.
we should live soberly.
Do what?
Live soberly,
Live soberly. Read.
righteously,
Read.
and godly.
Read.
In this present
In
world.
this present world. So he's given us the things that will allow us to live correctly in this present world.
Yes.
Titus 2 and 11.
God.
In fact, let's go to Wisdom of Solomon real quick. 3 and 9.
In the Apocrypha, Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 9.
Now, watch this with grace and mercy. Go ahead, sir.
They that put their trust in him shall understand the truth.
See? So, if you put your trust in Yahweh, you will understand truth.
God.
Watch this now. Read.
And such as be faithful.
Such as what?
Be faithful.
Be faithful
in love.
in love.
Shall abide with him.
Watch it now. Read.
For grace.
For
and
what?
For grace.
Read.
And mercy.
And what?
And mercy.
Read.
Is to his saints.
It's to his saints.
Come.
Not to no one else.
That's right.
It's to his saints. That goes according to Psalms 149
That's
and
right.
148.
Come.
Read.
And he has cared for his elect.
And he's cared for his elect. And the elect is the saints.
Come. That's Isaiah 45 and 4. His elect.
See, so when we have that now, you know, well, that's like when anyone tries to tell you not to follow the law, you need to rebuke them and walk away. Because they don't know the scriptures. They don't know it.
Because you want to get truth.
They don't know it. They don't know the scriptures.
That's right.
And these saints are the elect.
They can't sing this song.
In fact, let's Psalms 140. Psalms 140. Yeah, let's go to 148 and read 14 because that's like a double whammy right there. Let's go.
The book of Psalms, chapter 148, verse 14. He exalteth the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints.
See, the praise of all his saints. Now, who are the saints? Let's get that real clear now. It's not the so-called Jews. It's not the people that they call St. Peter and St. Paul and all of those ones that have nothing to do with him. But watch what it says.
Even the children of Israel.
The children of Israel. They're the saints. Read.
A people near unto him.
Near unto him.
Praise ye the Most High God.
Wow. You can't get it any clearer than that.
You can't get it clearer than that.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Hands up like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed, indeed. So we get some good response from the viewers. All right. Well, since there's no more questions, to the saints of the Most High God, His elect, we're going to ask you to continue to tune in each week and to listen to our broadcasts. And Officer, why don't you explain to me a little bit more about liking us and subscribing and so on?
want to give all praises to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushua, Kwam Yesharala, Kwam Yesharala. I want to ask you, all brethren, sisters and brothers, to go ahead, please like us, subscribe, please leave a comment. Always remember that we have our Sabbath on 11 o'clock a.m. and we have our Bible study at 7 o'clock until then. And again, shalom.
Shalom.